On this week's show, former golf touring professional and New Brunswick Hall of Fame member Kim Adams, and former elite level swimmer and founder of MindFit, Lesley Smyth. Kim, what an amazing journey in the game of golf, but let's go way back. Who taught you how to play?
I have to say my father, because growing up in Campbellton, of course our summers and seasons were small, and Dad was an avid golfer back then, and Dad would probably play, every day's off, every time he could. So I'd have to say my father would taught me how to play. There wasn't such thing as junior programs or anything back then up in Campbellton, so my dad and a couple of his friends, I'd always would hop in with them and on the golf cart, and off we went.
How difficult was it being the girl and having no junior programs, having some restrictions to play, and there weren't very many girls playing the game, especially in northern New Brunswick?
Yeah, I think back then, when you look at the 80s and 90s growing up, I think it was sort of that thing at most golf courses. Juniors were restricted at certain times of the day to play, could only play with the seniors, as they would call it. So, of course, there was always that. And then golf was not a big thing in Campbellton. Everyone played hockey, everyone played baseball back then. So I don't remember having many junior golfers, girls, so I always played with the boys, but that was no different with any other sport I played. So to me, I didn't feel any different. I just always played with the guys. The guys always seemed to push me, which also made me play better because I always wanted to beat the guys. So it was always one of those things where, to me, I had a couple of my cousins who were all about the same age. We all played golf together, and I was always wanting to beat them, always wanted to be better than them. So it wasn't until we had a little North Shore League. I can't remember now what it's called, but in the early 90s we'd have like Restigouche, Galbraith, Puckmush, and Miramichi, and we'd have all these junior tournaments throughout the North Shore. And it wasn't until I started playing with the girls more my age and meeting girls from the other golf courses, but there wasn't many of us. At each tournament, if were a dozen girls amongst 4 clubs, that was a good tournament.
Why do you think that? Why? And is it the same way today in the game?
I think it's certainly grown. I mean, you can see on TV, you can see especially when you go down the U.S. to the universities and stuff. I don't know. A lot of people have asked me that, why women's golf. It's certainly come a long ways. I look at from early 90s to now. If you go to local golf course now, there's a lot more girls. I just think it's still a guy's game. It's still known and as it's the boys' club. It's a guy's game, and as much as the girls are getting in there, it's still sort of that boys' game, I think.
That's so unfortunate.
Yeah.
When did you know that golf was going to be your sport? When did you realize, like, you played university soccer?
Yeah.
It came, the game didn't come late to you, but when did you realize that, hey, I want to be a golfer?
It probably wasn't until university. Like, growing up home, skiing was my passion, to be honest with you. Ski racing, I was going to be the next Olympian ski racer. But then I was also going to be in the Canadian soccer team. So it wasn't, and I played UMB soccer for 2 years, but it wasn't until I went off to university in South Carolina into my 3rd year university where I said, okay, because growing up in Campbellton, we never driving range, first thing. So I'd bike to the golf course, I'd play golf all day. It was kind of, the golf course was my babysitter. If I played 36 or 54 holes that day, we just play golf all day long. So when it came to the technical side of the golf, I never had that. So it wasn't until I got to university where I understood. I had a really great coach, Howard Vroon, where I start more understanding technically in my golf swing, and being able to, it got to the point where I said, okay, now I know why I'm hitting it right or why am I hitting it left. And it really wasn't until then where the consistency came. And that's when I was like, maybe I can do this. And at the same time, that was the same era that Heather Wilbur was out. Yeah. So knowing that Heather, she was the first female out of New Brunswick to do that. So knowing that, hey, maybe I can do this. And for sure, Heather mentored me through universities. At the time, she was in Myrtle Beach and I was in Charleston, so we were only an hour and a half apart. So having that little push through university was certainly when I decided, hey, let's try this, right? And she sort of guided me as to what do I need to do from here, because there's a lot of stuff other than just playing golf when it came to making that decision.
How competitive was the game and the female and the women's game here in New Brunswick? There were some great players, and Leanne Richardson being one of them, Heather, Sarah Meldrum, Carrie Vaughn. You lived in that competitive world.
Yeah, it was. You know, Annie Mallory, she's a little bit younger than me, but there was a great group of girls there that every junior provincial or amateur, whatever that was, anyone could have won. So it was actually fun. Once I got start playing more like at the provincial level from Campbellton, that's when I start really playing against the girls that we're all good. We're all at the same level. Everyone was good, and that's when it got fun, where competing against those girls. But yeah, like Carrie Vaughn and Sarah Meldrum and Heather, and they were intimidating. When Heather was on there, when those girls were there, and I was younger than them, so it was intimidating to play against them, but I did learn so much from them, and I still keep in touch with them. Yeah.
What did you learn from the game, and what did you learn about yourself early on that helped you into the university game?
Probably, you know, growing up, golf wasn't the only thing I did. Like I said, I played every other sport. Like it was, I'd go play around some golf, and then I'd have to hurry up and get to ball practice that night or get to the soccer field. And I think just my grit, I guess. I hate to lose at anything I do. I think anyone that knows me could say that, you know, and that was a challenge in itself once you got out on tour, was to work on that side of the game. But I think just my perseverance with always wanting to be best, like the better, you know, hit the ball better at the ball field, or hit the ball better on the golf course, or get a higher soccer kick. Like I always wanted to get better, and I think regardless of the sport I played, it just transpired into golf easily, and it just into real life, really. You know, it's just, I always want to, if I'm mowing the lawn, I could end there, but no, I kind of want to do it around the edges so it looks better. Like everything always had to be better.
Where'd you get the grit?
Probably from my dad again. You know, he was always like, Kim, if you want it, you got to work for it. And I remember since at a young age, it's like he instilled that in me. You know, I grew up in an area in Campbellton. It was kind of a tough area because the dad worked at the local mill there, and the pulp mill, and it shut down for 12 years. So it wasn't easy, but I never ever missed out on any sporting activities because of it. And Mom and Dad always found a way to make it work. You got to work at it. You got to work at it. And they said, if you're going to keep working at it, we'll keep helping you. And I think that's where it kind of instilled in me.
So UMB, soccer, South Carolina, golf.
Yeah.
When your university days are starting to end, Heather's down there working on her game. It's, when was, okay, I'm going to make a career, I'm going to try to turn pro, and what was that turning pro process like?
It wasn't until my senior year, so it was actually then was 5 years. I was able to get 5 years total eligibility between the two sports at university, where I made that decision. It's when, like I said, the numbers really started getting lower. You know, shooting in the 60s was doable, and I was doing it. And at that point, I graduated that May of '02, and then that fall was the first year of the qualifier for the Futures Tour. So Heather's the one who kind of said, this is your stepping stone. She said, you know, this is the sort of the drive to the LPGA, and it was, because everyone coming up through the LPGA had gone through the Futures Tour as well, and that's where she was at as well, just before, of course, she fell sick. So that's where it's like, this is what Heather did, so this is what I'm going to do. Like, I didn't know any other way, right? And because of this is what Heather did, that's what I did. Yeah. What
was it like putting the tee in the ground in your first professional event? How nerve-wracking was that?
Oh, it was crazy. And
were you shaking?
Yeah, I don't think the ball got off the ground. It was, and to be honest with you, it was my first professional event, and I had my first hole-in-one in my first professional event. I've only had one hole-in-one in my whole life.
Well, you weren't that nervous.
Yeah, one hole-in-one in my whole life, and that was it. It was my first professional event. It was in Florida. Yeah, I didn't see it, but yeah, it was just so surreal. Like, I can't believe I'm this young kid from northern New Brunswick. Here I am teeing it up in Florida and going to try to make a living out of it. And that was pretty, you know, I was young. I was 22 or 3 at the time. So I had such financial support from everyone back home. So just to have that opportunity, that everyone was backing me up, everyone was helping me, it was a pretty cool feeling. How
nerve-wracking. And we've had some amazing golfers turn pro from the Maritimes and try it out on tour.
Yeah.
How difficult and nerve-wracking is it knowing that this 5-footer is for this amount of money and I need to make this to make sure that I'm paying bills?
Yeah, that's the other side of the game that a lot of people don't see, right? They see it on TV and see everyone winning this money and they get, wow, they're lucky they get to play golf for a living. But that, on the other side, there's that. I'll never forget my last year on tour. I think I went 7 straight tournaments, 8 straight tournaments without making a cut. That's a lot of money, and all I kept thinking was, like, at the same time, I'm trying to keep an apartment in Florida. I'm still paying bills in an apartment in Florida. We're traveling all across the U.S., and I've just missed 7 or 8 cuts in a row. And as much as you try not to think about it, it's there. And you quickly learn when it's your job, and I think it's just like anyone else in their job, if whatever's affecting you outside of the game is going to affect you on the golf course. And I think that's what happened to me last year. Like, everything, it was just like the ball start rolling, and yeah, it was, you miss one cut and then the pressure, it's that much more pressure to make the next cut.
What was it like teeing it up in 2 Canadian Opens and 2 U.S. Opens? The U.S. Open.
Yeah. Yeah, the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open was amazing. My first one was at Pumpkin Ridge in Oregon in '03. Of course, I draw the first tee time on opening day, so it's spectators, as you can understand, everywhere. And I'm on the first tee. You know, Kim Adams from Tide Head, New Brunswick, and I don't think the ball went much higher than knee high, but it went straight. It was crazy. It was exactly what you see on TV. It's hard. The crowds, a golf course like no other. You know, you're standing in the rough and you can't see your feet. That first year, that first U.S. Open was crazy. I shot 73 the first day, and I'm tied with Annika, T20 going into round 2. Just to be in that environment was crazy. And then we don't need to talk about what happened on day 2, but just to say that, hey, I shot 73 at a U.S. Open, and to be in the clubhouse, in the locker room, you know, Helen Elferson, because it's all alphabetical, so it was Kim Adams and then Helen Elferson next to me in the locker room. So just being part of everyone you grew up watching TV. You know, Annika walking in and as if, you know, just another player with you, someone you're competing against at the time, right?
Was there an aura around Annika at the time? Yeah,
for sure. There was her, everyone followed her. You knew where Annika was on the course. You know, this is when she was in her prime. You know, the crowds followed her. You know, Helen Elferson, the Sari Packs, like all them, they were getting followed more than more than Kim Adams, but it was fun. It was fun because there was a lot of, being in Oregon, there was a lot of Canadian fans down there, so anytime they'd see a Canadian flag on a bag, they'd sort of like, come on, you can do it, you can do it. So it was fun seeing that.
How memorable was that position to be in? And in that moment, did you realize that this is the pinnacle and this doesn't happen, so you have to embrace it. You embrace the moment because this might not happen again.
Yeah, like you're trying to embrace it, but then you're also trying to say, okay, you got to get ready for tomorrow. You know, it was hard because your phone's ringing. You know, the news is, the local newses are calling. Everyone's calling to congratulate in the first round. It's like, it's only round 1. I'm trying to get to round 4 here. But it was hard also not to think about, if I just make the cut, I'm getting $15,000. If you just make the cut, right? I could finish last, but still just make the cut. And that's when, you know, that's the difference between me at the time and anyone else is that they're not thinking about making a cut, they're thinking about winning that golf tournament. And back then I remember talking to my caddy, Mandy, and saying, we could like make $15,000 right now. We should just make the cut. We just got to make the cut. Anyway, it wasn't a good mindset, obviously. We were both excited with the round. We sort of, got back to the hotel that night. We were really excited. There wasn't much sleep had that night. I was really nervous going into the second round. And I had a late tee time because I had a morning tee time day one, which meant I had the last tee time of day two. So conditions were a lot more tougher. The winds were high. And it was just, a combination of that.
Well, it's been an incredible journey, Kim, and you're such a great ambassador for the game of golf in this province and really the Maritimes. New Brunswick Hall of Fame member. Yeah. It's been an honor to sit down and talk with you today.
Well, thank you.
It's a commonly asked question, Lesley. What's your first recollection, the first time you jumped in the pool and knew that swimming was going to be your sport of choice?
Oh, wow. My dad brought me to the pool when I was 9 months old every single day just to go and enjoy it and have fun, and went through the colors and all of that, and the Vikings had a tryout session, and I went, and when I won the race, I was committed at that point as soon as I jumped in, and that was in the end of grade 5 spring, so I would have joined in the summer of grade 6 at age 12. And from that point on, it was just swimming. I mean, you didn't have any other time for anything else at that point.
How many hours a day?
It was 4 hours a day, Monday to Saturday. So we trained 2 hours in the morning at 5 a.m. and 2 hours at night every single day. Our only day off was Sunday. And that was back in sort of the mindset, the more the better, right? And we're seeing it shift, which is, such a great direction to take this type of sport in. I mean, you need the mileage, you need the practice time in the pool, that's a guarantee, but, that was almost overkill, really.
So at that young age, we can talk about it being a natural.
Yes.
Obviously, you were a natural in the pool.
Right.
When did you work on the technical side, and how did that technical aspect help your natural ability?
I moved up the levels within that first year. There wasn't a whole lot of time in between me moving up and seeing great success. I was this height by the age of 13, so I was already long and lanky and and kind of set up for swimming, and so. It didn't take long to move up to the high level, and then the technical parts came in. Then the more outside training came in, where we would travel to to Fredericton for different meets or competitions with the UNB swim team, or I would travel with the university team, in middle school in order to get other competitions and things like that. And so the technical part came in when we were on the pool deck, and it was there was a few of us who were national level swimmers, and that's when it came into play, and that's when we worked on it. But there was a lot of miles put on morning and night.
How difficult was it not staying at your own age group? Skill-wise, you're way above, and then you're interacting now with university-age kids and competing against them. How stressful was that?
Intimidating, very intimidating, to be honest. I think partly because of my personality. I definitely was a shy kid growing up, and so that was difficult. These guys are, they're able to go to the pubs at the end of a swim meet, or they're in the hotel room and doing whatever gets done on those university nights. But my dad was always there. He always traveled to wherever the meets were, and so So I always felt comfort, and they were very supportive of me. I mean, I was competing at their level, so I don't know if maybe there was just a level of respect there, and they knew I was a younger one coming up, and I knew the coaches of the university teams very well from Mount A and UMB, and they took me under their wings and really took care of me whenever I traveled with them. So, yeah.
You talk about the next level. The Olympics were on your radar.
Yes.
At 13, 14, and you moved away from home. Talk about that experience and how difficult that was at such a young age. Right.
No, Olympics were definitely on the horizon for me. The 1996 Olympics is what I had been hoping for. So in 1992, I had gone to the Olympic trials, and was there amongst Mark Tewksbury, my childhood hero, who I'm all of a sudden standing beside for O Canada, and just sort of starstruck. But I competed there and thought, okay, yeah, this is where I want to be in 4 years, and. So I was approached by a coach in Ontario who saw some potential and said, if I can get you here, would you consider coming? And I didn't have a long time to decide, and we just went for it. And I just said, Dad, yep, I'm ready to go. I'll go. And I went for 6 months. I was the second part of grade 9, which was in junior high school at that point. And I billeted with a family, really, really great family, so that was nice. But the amount of training and the level of training was far exceeded what was accessible to us here, unfortunately. But I was also a big fish in a little pond in New Brunswick or the Maritimes, and then you go there and it's a whole different story. Right. And now you're competing at the same level as a lot of these other individuals. But the training was excellent. It was intense. I was expected to do a lot of the things that the 18 and 19-year-olds were doing at age 13, 14. And that was tough physically and mentally, but I stuck through it. And then that summer at Nationals, it might not mean a whole lot to people, but I had dropped, a second and a half in a 100-meter backstroke, which is an enormous amount of time in the swimming world. And so I know it doesn't seem like much, but which, it left me 5th in the country, and had broken, some provincial records and things like that. And was completely overwhelmed by the experience, came home and just dropped. I dropped that summer. I had about 2 weeks left before going back into high school. Just was burnt out, feeling like I didn't have energy or motivation at all at this point, and I couldn't understand why. I couldn't understand, you can't reflect at that age and say, well, perhaps it was all of this, very quick progression, really. Yeah. I started when I was 12, and by 14, I was at Olympic trials, and I was, becoming 5th in the country by age 15, and it was just a lot, and moving away, and came back, and we had a new coach, and the coach, and you're always going to have good and great ones, and then not so great ones, but there wasn't a level of energy that I felt from him that I really, really needed at that point, I think, to continue to swim. And I had to hang up the goggles at that point and take a breath. And, I think that in itself was probably one of the most difficult experiences, was to explain that I was leaving swimming to people.
Yeah, let's talk about MindFit and your new passion, really helping kids reach their peak and their elite level.
Yeah, it's been great. I kind of sort of took my passion of sport, of counseling, of education. We taught together for years, and sort of brought it all together to say, you know what, it's not just the elite athletes that I want to help support get to the next level and get through. It's to help those that are struggling, and how can we work towards getting you to a healthy spot. Even just the recreational athlete who just wants to enjoy it, but how do they deal with pressure to do more. So it's been refreshing that way to be able to say, okay, I have my experience, and let's use this to really sort of support some of these young athletes that are going through similar, pressures and demands that are put on these young kids quite early.
If you had one piece of advice to tell an elite level athlete and their parents, what would it be?
To embrace the journey, embrace the process, and trust in yourself, in your strengths, in your commitment. But at the end of the day, you are more than your sport.